Just a few days ago, on April 19, China's CATL, which holds the overwhelming #1 share in the world's secondary battery market, announced a new 500 watt-hour per kilogram battery. The energy density of 500 watt-hour per kilogram is twice the energy density of the 4680 battery that Tesla is mass-producing. And they say that they are already discussing protocols for application to aircraft with related companies to mount them on small passenger planes beyond electric vehicles. In addition, as for electric vehicles, it is said that they will have mass production capacity by the end of this year, so electric vehicles equipped with it are expected to appear around the next year. On April 20th, the day after the announcement, a report came out through the media that the Republic of Korea would become the world's first country to mass-produce all solid-state batteries by investing 20 trillion won by 2030 jointly with the public and private sectors. A solution is being considered for around 2030. Perhaps they were not aware of the announcement the day before that CATL would already start mass production this year. I would like to talk about the structure of the condensed battery they announced and how they realized such a high energy density through today's video. So, let's start our tech trip. First, let's look at the structure of a secondary battery that is widely used today. The basic composition consists of a cathode material coated on aluminum foil, an anode material coated on copper foil, and a porous polymer separator to prevent explosion due to physical contact between the anode and cathode. And after inserting these composed films into a pouch or cylindrical can, pouring liquid electrolyte containing lithium ion into it and sealing it, the battery is completed. Here, comparing the state in which electrolyte is injected into the battery and the state before injection, it can be seen that the lithium ion expressed as yellow particles penetrates evenly between the cathode and anode materials in the finished battery with electrolyte injection. In other words, lithium ions contained in the electrolyte are scattered not only in the space between the cathode and anode materials, but also around the electrode materials inside the battery. The starting point of the basic concept of an all-solid-state battery is to replace the electrolyte with a solid one, which is highly volatile and causes an explosion when an environment where the anode and cathode come into contact or when the temperature around the battery becomes excessively high. Sulfide-based and oxide-based materials are the most widely studied and advanced solid electrolytes for all solid-state battery applications. If this kind of solid electrolyte is used instead of a liquid electrolyte, let's see how it changes through animation. Ideally, a polymeric separator is no longer needed, as the space between the anode and cathode is now filled with a solid material. However, according to recent research results, even if a solid electrolyte is used, the lithium charged in the negative electrode can still penetrate the solid electrolyte and penetrate into the positive electrode. Therefore, a method to minimize the possibility by forming a separate layer under the cathode layer is proposed. And even in CATL's announcement, it is slightly mentioned that separators are still being used. Therefore, the actual structure changes like animation. That is, a separate layer to prevent lithium metal from advancing towards the anode is expected to be located directly underneath the anode material. However, the liquid electrolyte in conventional batteries was filling the empty space between the cathode and anode layers. Only then can the action of rapidly inserting and releasing lithium ions required in the oxidation-reduction reaction during charging and reversing can be taken. The same is true for all solid-state batteries. Therefore, as shown in the video, the all-solid electrolyte particles containing lithium ions, indicated in yellow, form contact with each layer and are evenly distributed inside the anode and cathode layers. Now, at this point, let's compare the conventional lithium-ion battery on the left with the all-solid-state battery on the right. All solid-state batteries are said to have high energy density. But what is the reason for the high energy density? In fact, there is no reason for the high energy density in the all-solid-state battery structure in the video. The reason why all solid-state batteries have high energy density is that the existing anode layer, that is, the graphite layer, can be removed from the structure represented in the video. In this case, the weight and volume occupied by the existing anode layer are lost, so the energy density increases significantly. You've probably heard the term non-anode battery from time to time. And what that term means is that the anode material composed of graphite has been removed. Then, in conventional batteries, when charging, lithium ions are inserted into graphite having a layered structure and reduced to lithium. What happens when charging with graphite removed? Basically, charging is carried out in the form of coating lithium on copper foil, which served as a substrate for graphite anode materials. In a process very similar to electroplating, lithium ions near the copper foil accept electrons and are coated as lithium metal. Let's take a closer look. As charging progresses, lithium ions inside the solid electrolyte accept electrons from the copper foil, and crystalline lithium metal is accumulated on the surface of the foil. Since graphite is not used, the lithium metal, or anode layer, remains thin even after fully charged. So, what are the remaining problems in commercializing all solid-state batteries? It remains a serious problem called the interface problem in technical terms. You've probably seen it expressed like noodles mixed with particles in the cathode or anode active materials in the video so far. They are polymers that act as a type of adhesive that are added to adhere solid particle-shaped positive or negative electrode materials to metal foil and to maintain their shape by firmly adhering the particles to each other without scattering. The cathode layer dried after being coated with a mixture of polymer additives and cathode materials that act as adhesives can be compared to solid bricks. However, since conventional batteries use liquid electrolyte, lithium ions could naturally permeate through the gaps while wetting the bricks. In addition, a polymer separator is placed between the bricks to prevent them from contacting each other while allowing lithium ions to pass through. On the other hand, in an all-solid-state battery, an electrolyte composed of a hard solid is placed between the anode and cathode. If these layers are simply assembled, small empty spaces exist between the solid layers, making it very difficult for lithium ions to move from one layer to another. In technical terms, it is expressed as having high interfacial resistance, which is acting as a major obstacle to the commercialization of all solid-state batteries. As an example of the fact that the interface between two solid layers is really a problem, you can know it by looking at the content of Samsung SDI and LG Energy Solutions paper, which was published in Nature and Science papers 2 or 3 years ago and attracted attention. Both papers are about making all solid-state batteries with excellent lifespan and energy density. If you read them closely, both papers mention one sentence at a time that the characteristics were observed while applying tremendous pressure to the battery in the thickness direction. The interface problem was temporarily solved by forcibly applying pressure to compress the unstable interface between the two layers. The moment you remove the pressure, it will no longer be a battery. So what could be done other than the unrealistic way of applying tremendous pressure? One remaining method is to add a small amount of electrolyte. Unlike conventional lithium-ion batteries, most of the electrolyte layer is filled with solid electrolyte particles, and some remaining space is filled with liquid electrolyte. Samsung SDI's latest all-solid-state battery, published in the Nature paper in April last year, also uses such a method. It is a hybrid type of battery that uses solid and liquid at the same time, which is produced by soaking a solid electrolyte in an electrolyte called ionic liquid. Therefore, the most likely method used by CATL is very likely to have used a polymer electrolyte rather than a sulfide or oxide-based solid electrolyte. Since they said that they used a biomimetic high-conductivity material with a network structure in their presentation, it is almost certain that they chose a method that is relatively free in molding, cheaper in process cost than solid electrolyte, and easier to form an interface. It is understood that the all-solid-state battery to be developed by the 3 Korean battery companies has actually turned to using a polymer electrolyte instead of a solid electrolyte. However, if there is a difference, CATL is set to produce at the end of this year, while South Korean battery companies say they will produce at least 4 years later. CATL's announcement is sure to signal the beginning of fierce competition in the all-solid-state battery field, which has not received much attention and has been dismissed as a distant future. And it's unlikely to stop at an energy density of 500 watt-hour per kilogram. Today's video ends here. Goodbye.